Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Masters of Travel series. I'm John Werner, president of MAST Travel Network, and we are comprised of over 200 travel agencies scattered throughout the country, experts in planning travel all over the world. And I wanted to introduce our guest speaker today, Brendan from Celebrity Cruises, but Brendan's going to say more about who he is and his role at Celebrity. So welcome,
Yeah,
Brendan.
thank you. It's so good to be here. Appreciate the opportunity to talk to your clients about a subject that I am passionate about, which is experiencing Alaska and, of course, experiencing Alaska with Celebrity. I'm the manager of our cruise tour program, which is when we're combining a land tour with a Celebrity cruise in Alaska. I've been in the cruise industry almost 20 years now. The first 10 years I was on board, spent about 4 solid years cruising the southeastern coastline of Alaska. And then the last 8 years I've been working with the interior of Alaska on our land and sea experiences. So always excited to talk about Alaska, talk about the incredible experiences that are available to clients when they want to go there.
That's great. That's great. And to start off, I always think of Alaska cruise tours as the best of both worlds, meaning, you get to experience Alaska by water, but also on land. So, what does make Alaska cruise tour so popular?
What makes Alaska's cruise tours so popular, I think, is that when a lot of folks come into exploring what does a vacation experience look like for them in Alaska, they have certain ideals, right, that they want to achieve, like we all do. We go in the world, and there's those must-haves for us, and then the nice-haves. So when they think about the must-haves in Alaska, it's typically around a few core concepts, which are wilderness and wildlife and mountain and glaciers. If you're going to have an incredible Alaskan experience, then you really want a lot of that in abundance. And you get that on the cruise, no doubt. You can take a cruise to Alaska and have incredible wilderness and wildlife and mountains and glaciers. Some folks have a calendar limitation or whatever it might be, and they can only do 7 nights, and they shouldn't feel that they're not going to have those incredible experiences. But it is also true that if you want to elevate each of those experiences and have more wilderness and more wildlife and more mountains and more glaciers, then the way that you do that is by exploring the incredible interior of Alaska, which is destinations like Denali National Park, which is the millions of acres of pristine wildland, the tallest peak in North America. All of that is in the interior of Alaska. So I think just as a fundamental concept, there's a kind of an exploration that goes into looking to Alaska. They see the amazing experiences that are there on the coastline, and then they see the incredible experiences that are in the interior. And then it just becomes a question of, well, how far am I traveling to do this? Is this a once-in-a-lifetime experience? How much time do I have? Because, there's a truth about it, which is that, if you're in a drive market to Seattle and you can just hop down and get on a ship in 20 minutes, well, that's a different experience that you're probably looking for than someone who is, say, flying from Miami and has got an 8-hour flight, with connections in order to get down to the coast to be able to do it. That's a very different experience.
Sure.
Because it's going to be a once-in-a-lifetime experience for them. So I think a lot is about the experiences, and I think a lot is about who is the customer. What does that experience mean to them, and therefore, how they're going to push the boat out on doing different things.
Yeah. Well, yeah. In fact, let's take a look at a video that you sent to us that does show some of the spectacular scenery that anyone would enjoy on an Alaska cruise tour. So let's roll the video.
As one of the world's most exhilarating natural wonders, Alaska has so much to offer. Expansive landscapes, iconic wildlife, and intriguing native cultures. So when you book a Celebrity Cruises vacation to Alaska, be sure you experience the best of both land and sea. A celebrity cruise will take you to some of the most extraordinary stops along Alaska's Inside Passage. On your cruise, you'll experience updated luxury at every turn while taking in the best of coastal Alaska. You'll see glaciers flowing into the sea, forests rising up from the shoreline, and bald eagles soaring gracefully overhead. And as breathtaking as the cruise along the southeastern coastline is, there's so much more of Alaska just waiting to be discovered.
At least once a tour, I turned to my group and I said, I'd like to welcome you all to my office. This is where I work, and I'm glad you're here with me and that I can share Alaska with you.
Travelers who want the best of Alaska book a Celebrity Cruises cruise tour, which offers an exhilarating cruise and a multi-night, fully escorted land tour. On a Celebrity Cruise tour, the land portion of your adventure will immerse you in the unspoiled wilderness of Alaska's interior.
Driver and tour director will really be their concierge, their historian. They're going to be their friend. They're going to make sure that everything goes smoothly for those guests.
You'll experience the must-see destinations, as well as some local favorites your tour director will point out along the way. Destinations include Denali National Park, Seward, Fairbanks, Talkeetna, Girdwood, or Anchorage. Be amazed by North America's highest peak, Mount McKinley. Get stunning photos of caribou, rare birds, and Dall sheep. Go fishing in waters rich with salmon. Experience the famed midnight sun. And at every stop, you'll stay in authentic lodges and dine on the best local cuisine. Get the full Alaska experience with a coastline cruise, as well as travel deep into Alaska's rugged wilderness with a Celebrity Cruises cruise tour. Because Celebrity Cruises believes that every moment of your vacation should be measured by just how far it takes you from the ordinary. That's modern luxury. That's Celebrity Cruises.
You know, Brendan, that's a great video, and it does showcase what some of the differences are between coastal Alaska and interior Alaska as far as like scenery and wildlife. And can you tell us a little bit about the weather and the climate, you know, the differences between, again, coastal Alaska and the interior?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point, John. And so I talked a little bit before about how the coastline offers an incredible experience and the interior offers an incredible experience, an elevated experience. And what that video showed was some of the examples of that. So just to kind of dig a little bit deeper, you know, when I think about, you know, having amazing wilderness experiences on the coastline, one of the images that you saw there was the mist that was rising up from the forest. Well, that's Tongass National Park, which is the largest intact temperate rainforest in the world. And of course, what is surrounding that is misty fjords. And so that's one of the amazing wilderness experiences that can be had on the cruise. I mean, it is spectacular flying amongst, you know, the forests and the wildlife and the mountains and landing on the fjords. It's an amazing experience. It's an incredible wilderness experience on the cruise. However, when we think about Denali National Park, which you also saw, that's 6 million acres of pristine, wild, and wonderful land. That's the opportunity for the tundra and the taiga. Well, that's an elevated experience that can only be had in the interior of Alaska. Your wilderness experiences are elevated when on the cruise tour. Another great example was the eagles. Of course, great opportunity for wildlife on the coastline, but you also saw some of the bears. Well, one of the best opportunities for that is going to be in the interior of Alaska. So your wildlife experiences are elevated on the cruise tour. And then the mountains as well. Tremendous mountains on the coastline, the Brooks, the Aleutian Range, all along the coastline. But the tallest peak in North America, as you saw some great images out there,
Right.
Denali, Mount McKinley, that's over 160 miles from any port in Alaska. You have to go into the interior of Alaska. Your mountain experiences are elevated on the cruise tour. The coastline is spectacular, but the interior just elevates each of those experiences to make it into something special. And that imagery showed that beautifully. Where it changes on the coastline is that it's a little bit cooler. And as you get into the interior of Alaska, it's a little bit warmer. So the season in which we're cruising is, of course, the summer season. We start in May, we finish in September. Typically speaking, you know, on the coastline, you're probably going to be in around the early 60s.
Yeah.
For your temperature, obviously, that can fluctuate significantly, but it's just going to get a little bit warmer as you get into the interior. Also, the other thing that's happening that's getting into the interior as you're pushing further north is, of course, it's getting, depending on which solstice you're experiencing, you're either going to have more darkness or more sunlight.
Yeah.
So as you push north to Fairbanks, you know, when you're hitting summer solstice, which is June 21st, you're getting 70 straight days of sunlight.
Yeah.
And outside of that, in the wintertime, it's going to be dark for a few months at a time. So the more extremes start to happen as you push into the interior. But on the coastline, it's real nice also. So some differences are all amazing.
Yeah, very true. And I know, yes, you know, the temperature stays more temperate along the coast, definitely on the cooler side, and maybe whereas the interior, you're correct, it's wild swings in temperature depending on the time of the year. But you know, we can dispel the myth that Alaska is always cold, because it's not. It can be it can be hot in the middle of the summer in Fairbanks. So
for sure.
yeah. So I guess you know, one of the questions that people always ask is, what's the best time to go to Alaska? And of course, you know, Celebrity is there seasonally, as you mentioned, from May to end of September, and so forth. And but there's advantages to going in May versus September. And so why don't you talk about what makes May a good time to go versus what makes September a good time to go?
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head, John. Typically, people are looking for multiple things when they say, what is the best time to go to Alaska? And as you rightly point out, there are different experiences that you're going to get at different times. So really the question is, which one of those experiences do you value over the others in order to pick the time that you go to Alaska? So when I think about May time, you know, some of the value that you'll get in May time is, firstly, there's going to be less people there, right? Because you're not in the high season of cruising and land touring. And that can be nice, certainly, to have kind of less folks around as you're exploring a destination. Also in May time, you can find that some of the animals can be a little bit more active because they're foraging for food. There's less of the flora and fauna about, right? Because that hasn't grown out yet throughout the key part of the season. So less opportunity for them to hide. Certainly the whales, as they're migrating down Hawaii through the Pacific to the feeding grounds of Alaska, the calves can be a little bit more active in that time frame. So there are some good things that you'll certainly get in that time frame. As you transition into June, well, the salmon start to spawn. So kind of later May, early June, the kings start to spawn. That attracts bears. So certainly if you're looking for bear experiences, then you're going to want to be around when the salmon are spawning, because that's going to attract the bears. Also in June, you're going to have a summer solstice. So June 21st is when you're going to have the most sunlight at any part of the season. If that's valuable, then you certainly want to be there. And as you transition into kind of summer and then the back end of the season, you know, you'll have obviously less people again, because you're outside of the key part of the season. You're also going to find that there can be opportunities for the full foliage. So if you've ever been to, you know, maybe Canada or New England and seen the full foliage, now think about that times a gazillion, right? With millions of acres of pristine wild land that is turning burnt orange. It's an incredible sight. And you'll also potentially have some opportunities for northern lights if you're going far north enough to Fairbanks. So different parts of the season will provide you different things. But I think about, how do you make the decision as the best time to go? Think about those components, but also think about this. Alaska is the quintessentially natural destination. Everything that I have just said has the opportunity to be there and the opportunity to not be there. The bears could be there or not. The clouds may raise from Denali Peak or not. The aurora borealis may be there or not. But the longer someone goes to Alaska for, the more opportunities they create for themselves, for those magical, natural moments to happen. So I think one of the key considerations is not only what you want to see when you're thinking about going to the interior of Alaska, but also, do you have the time to add some additional days onto the cruise to create the land tour? Because again, those additional days will create the opportunities for those natural experiences, which is why you're in Alaska in the first place.
Very true.
So different times will give you different value, but certainly the more time that you're there gives you the most value.
Great. So, while we're, answering the main questions that people have about travel to Alaska. So we've talked about the best time of the year. We've talked about seeing the Northern Lights. What's your opinion about cruising northbound versus southbound, doing the northbound cruise tours or the southbound cruise tours? Because that's a common question as well.
A very, very common question. Folks want to know, should I do the land tour after the cruise, which would be a northbound cruise tour, or do I want to do the land tour before the cruise, which would be a southbound cruise tour? The fundamental answer to this question is that there is no difference in terms of the core components of the cruise, right? If you've got a cruise tour, let's just call it cruise tour number one to make the conversation easy. Whether you're doing that northbound with a land tour after or southbound with a land tour before, you're going to experience the same things, or certainly the same things will be included. I think one of the most consistent pieces of guidance that travel partners will provide is that it can be nicer to do a southbound. So the land tour before the cruise, because it's kind of like the hustle and the bustle of the land tour and then relaxing, on your cruise down to Vancouver. That's one perspective. It's certainly legitimate. There's a lot of value to it, but this is all about perspective. What is the value that that customer, that client is trying to get out of the experience? For me, and I'm just going to put forward a different perspective here. This is not necessarily the right answer, but it's just a different perspective to the one about the land tour before the cruise. I'm not a great flyer. I do not like flying. I've never liked flying. I just don't love it. And certainly what's true about a cruise tour is that you have some longer flights, right? Because you've got to get to Alaska. Now, if you are flying to a southbound, that means you're flying to Alaska first. You're going to fly to either Anchorage or Fairbanks. Now, that's a longer flight than getting to Vancouver.
Sure. Absolutely.
So you've got a longer flight. When you get there, probably going to be, 18, 19 hours of sunlight. And then you're going to go to your hotel, and depending on what time you arrive, right, you could get there at 6, 7 p.m. in the evening while land tour starts the next day at 7 a.m. There's some acclimatization that's needed there.
Yeah.
I'm not a great flyer. I'm not great at acclimatizing. So I don't prefer to do that. What I prefer to do is a northbound, because I fly to Vancouver, which is an easier flight. I get on board the ship, and of course, what's the first day of every cruise that anyone has ever been on? It's a sea day. So lots of time to acclimatize there, and then I acclimatize on the cruise ship. And when I get to Seward, I'm fresh. I'm ready to go to the land tour. Now that's just me. That's another perspective.
Yeah.
But I think the real value is less in saying this is what I, quote unquote, the travel partner may feel, and more in having a conversation with the customer and saying, look, these are the differences, this is the positives, and these are the negatives. And so what would best suit you in terms of the experience that you're looking to have?
Yeah, and that's one of the real benefits of working with a travel advisor, a professional that can help you sort that out, or a person going on Alaska cruise. For years, people thought Alaska cruises attracted only older guests, and that taking an Alaska cruise was not typically someone's first cruise. But I think that's very different from the reality of Alaska cruise guests. So why are Alaska cruises so popular with families and multi-generational groups?
There's just been a whirlwind of a change in the last 20 years since I've been around as to the type of customer that does an Alaska cruise. You're absolutely right, John. 20 years ago, Alaska cruise was the bucket list. It was the one that you did when you were done.
Yeah, right.
And that has changed. And you've seen it change in how cruise lines have changed the hardware that they have in Alaska.
Right.
That's been a whirlwind of a change. You did not have the biggest, the newest, and the brightest ships in Alaska 20 years ago, and you absolutely do now. And so when you certainly have kind of cruise lines that are kind of gearing up to who are very, very family friendly, certainly Celebrity is from a multi-generational family perspective, but the hardware is there in order to attract families. I think it's a couple things. I think people are looking for bonding experiences that are more than kicking it on the beach. And there's nothing wrong with kicking it on the beach. I love kicking it on the beach. But I also I've got a 4-year-old son. I also want to experience things with my 4-year-old son, that are amazing experiences that are going to be with us for a lifetime. And I think about, you take a kid to Disney World and, is the Magic Castle amazing? Sure. Is it anything compared to a 50,000-pound whale breaching the ocean? I don't think so. So if you have those experiences of a whale breaching the ocean or seeing a bear feeding off salmon, at Brooks River Falls, if you, land on a glacier and go dog sledding, they are active, incredible, wonderful experiences that you will take away for a lifetime. And I think that's what families want. That's what multi-generational families want. They want to have experiences together. And Alaska is a perfect place to be able to do that. So I love this so much that Alaska has changed. Because I was always the guy that was kind of out there doing the stuff even 20 years ago, and the fact that the multi-generational families, but particularly children, are seeing and experiencing Alaska now. It's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. And I think, again, you can talk to people, and Alaska now is their first cruise in some cases. And of course, there's nothing better than for grandparents or parents to see, their children, eyes are like, they're just wow and amazed by what they see, again, with the wildlife and the scenery. And that's something that a lot of people don't get to see wherever they live. So the you mentioned about a bucket list destination, and of course Alaska is a domestic destination, but it's just so truly amazing and uniquely different than any of the other states. And so it's easy and convenient in a way. I mean, you did talk about long distances of flying. And I also think a lot of people, they have, there's a lot of images in their mind about Alaska because it's been in movies and on TV. So there's a lot of iconic sites that people have seen. And they want to go there and see them in person and see them live.
And that's part of the reason, John, why it's a first to cruise market. That's why it's their first cruise. Alaska is actually now one of the very strongest, what we call first to cruise, basically, which is the people who have never cruised before, their first cruise is in Alaska. And that fundamentally comes down to one thing, which is that outside of cruising, people want to go to Alaska. They've seen the images, as you point out, they've seen the TV series, their buddies went there, whatever it is. But as they begin to explore what it actually takes to go to Alaska, because many of the destinations along the coastline are landlocked, there's 4 major roads in Alaska, so getting around is not super easy. That's why in a lot of cases in Alaska, there's a greater proportion of people in Alaska that own planes than anywhere else in the U.S. because you need them to get around. Yeah. So just getting around and doing things can be a little bit tougher in Alaska, and that is the reason why it's such a strong first to cruise market, because people say, I want to go to Alaska, and then they actually research what it takes in order to explore Alaska in 7 days, and inevitably the conclusion that they come to in many cases is, oh wow, for us as a family or a couple or whatever, to be able to do this, the easiest way is going to be a cruise. And the same thing with the land tour. When you think about the land tour and the times that you have, you know, doing that as part of a multi-night land tour before or after your cruise is super easy, especially when you think about those distances. Something that is a little bit unique to Celebrity from the industry standard is that our land tours are all fully escorted with local tour guides. And it just fits into that narrative of, look, it's an amazing place, but we want to make it easy. It's so true.
So, you know, we both know that people are seeking experiences, adventure. Families want memorable memories of traveling together. So what does a Celebrity cruise tour offer that speaks to that adventure and adventure seeking cruise customers? What makes a Celebrity cruise tour stand out from others?
So I think about it in a couple of different ways. I mean, I personally, talking about Celebrity as the cruise, it's such an important component of that, because having the new luxury experiences while on board our cruise ships is such an integral part to experiencing the destination with the comfort and the luxury that we want to offer to people. So I think some of your listeners may be familiar with Celebrity Cruises, but it is the incredible design that's on board our ships. It is the incredible dining experiences that are on board our ships and the entertainment. Sailing on board Celebrity is a new luxury experience that is not replicated by any other cruise line. And I'm not going to get into all the details of sailing on board a Celebrity ship, but I think about contrasting that with the experiences that you had during the day. You know, it's amazing to be able to go out and, you know, fly to Katmai National Park and be a little bit rugged as you get up to Brooks Falls to see the bears that are feeding from the salmon as they're spawning on stream. But then it's also great to get back to your ship at night and then have an amazing 5-star dining experience and amazing entertainment. Same thing. So contrasting those, having those, you know, incredible Alaskan experiences during the day, but then being able to come back to your ship at night. Right. That's what makes it very, very special when it's a Celebrity ship. I think the other part to that, specifically is to a cruise tour, is that for our cruise tours, we use what we call our revolutionized ships. And I may be getting into the weeds here, John, and feel free to stop me if I'm getting too industry specific. But the way it basically works in the cruise industry is that for Alaska, this is industry-wide, everyone tends to use newer ships for Seattle round trip and older ships for what's called open jaw Alaska sailings. Open jaw basically means it starts out in Vancouver and it ends in Seward or Whittier, because that's how you get to the interior of Alaska. It's just the way the industry goes. Same thing with Celebrity. In 2024, our Seattle round trips will be done by Celebrity Edge. Amazing ship. But the ships that we use for our open jaw sailings are a little bit older, which will be currently the Celebrity Millennium, but then also the Celebrity Summit. A few years ago, we started the process of what we call revolutionization, which is we wanted to bring some of our older ships up to the standard, the quality, the look, and the feel of our revolutionary ship, Celebrity Edge. So we spent $75 million per ship on revolutionizing those ships to have the look, the feel, and the amenities of the revolutionary ship, Celebrity Edge. And I say all of this because we are using those ships for open jaw sailings and then subsequently our Alaska cruise tours. Now, that may not feel super important, but let me tell you, when 50% of your cruise is actually on board the ship, as opposed to being in ports, it makes a huge, huge difference. So having revolutionized ships, having that kind of upgrades that we did recently to be able to have a new ship experience as part of open jaw Alaska sailings in our cruise tours is so huge.
Yeah.
For the land tour, a little bit differently, I mentioned that Celebrity's land tours are a fully escorted experience. Again, it doesn't feel like a big deal, but it is a big deal, because when you think about, traveling for several hours sometimes during the day, getting to destinations, you don't want to be standing in line to check in into your hotel. You don't want to have to be figuring out what excursions to do. You don't want to have to go through a process of where is the best restaurant to eat, how do I get there. You don't want to do all of that. And that is what a fully escorted experience with celebrity is. It is someone who is doing your hotel check-ins, so you don't have to, booking your excursions, making the recommendations, telling you where has the freshest halibut at the beginning of the season. It just makes it this incredibly seamless experience. And even though 10 days may feel like a lot, right, as part of a cruise tour, 7-night cruise and just an example, 3-night land tour, it's not that much. So you really want to maximize it. And the way you maximize it is by having local expertise, giving you the best guidance while you're there. So a fully escorted experience is key for us. And then luxury travel. Again, you know, we want to make it comfortable and wonderful. And we have luxury motor coaches that we utilize as part of our land tours, but we also travel by luxury rail. Now, just to kind of set the stage, John, there's lots of rail carriages in the interior of Alaska.
Right.
Some are privately owned, some are owned by the Alaska Railroad. It's the Alaska Railroad engines that pull them all, but the rail carriages themselves, a lot of variation there. You can have your run-of-the-mill basic carriage that's, you know, providing some local transportation, and then you can have luxury rail carriages. We basically use the best that's there. There's nothing better than the rail carriages we utilize. Beautiful domed roofs, wide, well-apportioned leather seating, bar service available at the seats. It's just an amazing way to travel through Alaska, and every single one of our cruise tours includes a minimum of one rail segment. Some of them have multiple rail segments. And then finally, we're always using the best lodges available in every destination that we go to. Our focus is the destination. We want to go to the best places, but in each of those places, we're going to use the best available lodges there. Sometimes that means a lodge like Hotel Alyeska, which you may be familiar with, John, or your listeners may be familiar with, literally by far and away the best property anywhere in Alaska. And sometimes it means properties that are a little more rustic than that, but they'll always be the finest available in each of the destinations that we go to. So revolutionized sailing, fully escorted experience, the best available lodges in each location, and luxury transportation. The combination of all of that just makes it a great traveling experience.
Yeah, so true. And, you know, one of the other things that, you know, we've been talking about how celebrity cruises makes it the whole experience easy for people to make sure that they get to see all of Alaska that they've always dreamed about, and, you know, sailing in luxury, the rail experience, they bring it to life. But I think one of the other things beyond that is of course, the great experiences, but I think just on board the ship too, or even on the tour, they bring it all to the tour guide, or anybody on the ship also brings everything to life. I mean, you're not just on the ship trying to get from point A to point B. That's part of the whole experience too. At least I feel that a celebrity brings Alaska on board the ship. And so it's also that's part of the whole experience of taking a celebrity.
We have a dedicated onboard naturalist who is on board the ship. And you're 100% right. Giving talks on the destinations that we're going to, talking about the history of it, you know, the natural elements that surround it, you know, just to kind of dial down a little bit on what that means. You know, you can, like, you know, all cruise ships, when they go to, for example, Glacier Bay or Hubbard Glacier, they'll have a national park ranger on board who, you know, who is helping out with some of the narration. The truth about it is, John, that sometimes they're really good and sometimes they're not. You know, it's just kind of, not everyone is adept at public speaking and bringing things to life, and, you know, and all of that good stuff. That's why on Celebrity we have a dedicated onboard naturalist who is there to do that and is an expert in that and can bring that to life. And it really makes it a different experience. Like if you're in Hubbard Glacier or Endicott Arm, and you're having someone who has a tremendous in-depth knowledge about the natural elements to it that's bringing it to life. It's a very different experience from someone who maybe certainly has the knowledge, but is not adept in articulating in a way that someone who is a dedicated naturalist will be. So it's a really, really different experience, and yeah, we're super proud of it.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. And well, so Brendan, as we get close here to wrapping up our conversation, one more question that, of course, is on everybody's minds. What do they pack in their suitcase? How do people dress for an Alaska cruise tour?
All about the layers.
Yeah.
You don't know what the temperature is going to be. You don't know if it's going to be raining or not. So you want layers. You don't want big, heavy coats. You certainly don't want big, heavy boots. Just a decent pair of sturdy trainers is totally fine. Bear in mind, this is the most casual place anywhere in the U.S. They sell more duct tape in Alaska than anywhere else in the world. Half their time, their clothes are kept together by duct tape. So don't think about formal or looking incredible. It's all about, having some good waterproof, warm clothing that is light and can be taken on and off at any given moment. It could be 80 degrees in Fairbanks, and then it can be, 20 degrees less with rating. So you really need to kind of have good, solid, comfortable clothes, layers, waterproof, that can be taken on and off. And that is going to give you your best experience as you're traveling through.
True. Very good. Yeah. So Brendan, what else would you, as we wrap it up, what else would you like to tell everyone about a great sailing on a celebrity cruise tour to Alaska?
Just go to Alaska. You may have thought about it, you may have explored it, you didn't end up doing it. Just get there. Now, we would love to take you there as celebrity, whether it's as part of a cruise or a cruise tour. We know we provide fabulous experiences both by cruise and land tour to explore Alaska, but above all, just go, because it will be an incredible, life-enriching experience.
Well, that's great. Well, Brendan, thank you very much. We really appreciate it, and shedding a lot of light on the Alaska experience in general, and of course how great celebrity takes people to Alaska. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John.